I remember the moment like it was yesterday, sitting alone at that corner booth, nursing a drink I barely touched, while the laughter and chatter from the rest of the restaurant felt like it belonged to another world. The date had been a disaster. He was late, distracted, checking his phone more than talking to me, and by dessert, I could barely force a smile. I left the restaurant, embarrassed, frustrated, and surprisingly empty. I had been coming to this little diner for months now. It was my refuge after long work days, a place where no one knew my story or my mistakes. And tonight, it had saved me from more humiliation. I slid into my favorite corner booth, letting out a quiet sigh, hoping the awkward tension of the evening would fade into the soft hum of neon lights and clinking glasses. She appeared then, like a calm ripple across the chaos. The waitress I had noticed on countless visits, warm smile, eyes that carried a quiet understanding, and a presence that somehow made the world feel softer. I had always admired her from afar, thinking of her as a silent guardian of the diner, someone who noticed everything but never intruded. "Rough night?" she asked, leaning slightly toward me, not in an intrusive way, but with the subtle kindness of someone who genuinely cared. Her voice was soft, almost hesitant, like she didn't want to assume too much but knew enough to reach out. I shrugged, trying to muster a casual tone. "You could say that." Her smile didn't falter. "Want me to sit?" she asked, quietly, nodding toward the empty seat across from me. There was something in the way she asked it, an offer that felt like a lifeline without words. I shook my head, unsure why I felt the sudden weight of nerves, though she wasn't threatening, just here. "No, I'm fine," I muttered, staring at my untouched drink. My heart raced. I had come to avoid attention, not invite it, yet her presence already made me feel safer. She lingered, watching me carefully. "Rough nights make the world feel colder, huh?" I laughed dryly, and for a brief moment I felt like I wasn't alone. "Yeah, colder and louder and disappointing." She nodded. "I get it." There was a pause, the kind that is heavy with unspoken thoughts. She was close enough that I could see the subtle worry in her eyes, the way she tilted her head slightly as if reading my mood. She wasn't just a waitress tonight. She was something else, someone who sensed the cracks in me that I didn't even want to acknowledge myself. "You don't have to be alone if you don't want to," she whispered, finally, and my stomach twisted. Her words felt like an invitation, a gentle nudge toward something I hadn't realized I was longing for. I wanted to say yes, to let someone sit across from me, to let the warmth in, but something in me hesitated. I wasn't sure I deserved this simple act of kindness, the offer of human connection without expectation. Her gaze softened. "If you want, I'll stay in your booth tonight." I froze. The words were quiet, almost fragile, but they carried a weight that made me swallow hard. Stay? In my booth? Just be here? My mind raced, questioning why I felt so conflicted. Was it fear, pride, or something else? Something I hadn't dared to name yet. I looked up at her, really looked, and saw the sincerity in her expression. It wasn't flirtation, at least not in the way I had feared. It was concern, care, a willingness to share a small part of her evening with someone who clearly needed it. "Really?" I asked quietly, trying to make my voice steady. She nodded, a small, reassuring smile playing on her lips. "Really? You don't have to say yes, but I mean it." And in that moment, I felt a crack open inside me, the walls I had built after too many disappointments and failed expectations beginning to crumble. "Okay," I whispered finally. "Okay, stay." She slid into the seat across from me, and the world seemed to shift slightly. The din of the restaurant faded, the laughter and chatter turning into a soft background hum. We didn't speak for a moment, just sat there, the comfort of her presence filling a void I didn't know existed. Then, softly, she said, "I'm glad you let me." I swallowed, trying to articulate the sudden rush of gratitude and vulnerability. I didn't know I needed this. Her eyes softened. Sometimes we don't realize how much we need company until it's offered without strings. We talked then, in the quiet intimacy of a booth tucked into the corner. She asked about my day, my work, small things I didn't want to share with anyone. And for the first time that evening, I did share, honestly, without pretension. She listened, really listened, and her reactions were gentle, her understanding apparent. The conversation shifted seamlessly from light jokes to confessions I didn't expect to make. I spoke about my past disappointments, the loneliness that had crept in after bad relationships, the weight of expectations I carried silently. She didn't judge. She simply nodded, offering her presence as solace, like a silent promise that someone could be trusted. "You know," she said, tilting her head thoughtfully, "sometimes the smallest acts of kindness matter more than grand gestures." I looked at her, feeling a strange warmth spread across my chest. "I think you're right." She smiled, and it was as though the universe had shrunk to just this booth, this night, this fragile bubble of understanding and connection. I wanted to tell her that I had never felt this calm in months, that her choice to stay had transformed something inside me, but words failed me. Instead, I just nodded, letting the silence speak, and she understood. Hours passed unnoticed. The restaurant thinned, the lights dimmed, and yet neither of us moved. We shared quiet observations, small jokes, the kind of conversation that wasn't forced but grew naturally, bridging the gap between two strangers who had both carried invisible burdens. Finally, as the night wound down, she stood to leave. I felt a pang, a strange reluctance I hadn't anticipated. "You can come back tomorrow," she said softly, as if reading my hesitation. "I think I will." She nodded, her presence retreating but leaving behind a warmth I knew I would carry for days, maybe longer. As I watched her walk away, I realized profound. Sometimes a simple act, an offer to sit, to share, to stay, could change the trajectory of a lonely night, even a lonely life. I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I had in months, and in the quiet aftermath, I knew that this wasn't just about surviving a terrible date. It was about opening myself to connection, to trust, and perhaps to something more. I finished my drink, my heart still racing, a smile tugging at my lips, and as I left the diner, I carried with me a quiet hope, the kind that waits patiently, often unnoticed, until the right person chooses to share a booth, a moment, a night, a life.